Hey, davidtswood here, and welcome to my Extra Mile. Our comment winner is Sonia Cherchochin. She said, I absolutely love the message. Thanks for sharing it, and I'm sharing it too. She was talking about my show regarding the new normal sucks. Loads of people have been loving that show, so check it out. My show today is called Reality's a Bitch. And you're gonna love this show. It's really, the idea that most people live and hope that reality works out in their favor. So live in a constant state of disappointment or upset or frustration versus really just living in the reality that is and having the internal tools and the mental tools and the fortitude to be able to navigate anything that comes along. So enjoy the show. Reality sucks. And no, I'm sorry, reality's a bitch. The new normal sucks. Don't forget to subscribe, push like, and get involved with the conversation. Get involved with the comments. I appreciate everyone that is. And we'll definitely see you on the other side. Hey there, another solo show, driving to the golf course. It's late October now, only a few days left for the golf course to be open, so trying to squeeze in a few games before the end of the season. I love this sort of transitional area because, most Canadians are starting to think, well, where I live especially, it's a Four Seasons kind of wonderland. Boat came out of the water yesterday. People are starting to think about the ski hill, snowboarding, cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, etc., right? And that's certainly it's a beautiful transition here into sort of the differences. And occasionally it's like today I was out on my motorbike, and of course it's getting colder, and the bike's going to go away as soon as it starts snowing. Last year that happened in Christmas Eve, so I was able to ride late. It's still pretty chilly, but there's occasions where I'm thinking, oh God, wouldn't it be nice to have a full season of boating, like year round, whenever you wanted, which obviously in some places down in Phoenix, a lot of my friends are, they love that year round kind of weather, their ability to go golfing or boating or whatever. But I look at these trees as we're going by right now, they're just changing all red. So I suppose one of the things I want to talk about is, how we get tricked into routine. And it's kind of happening internally and externally. Internally, if we understand how the brain works, the brain isn't designed, our brain, when we think about those two characters in the brain I always talk about, right? And I'm talking about the two voices, let's say, the positive stream that we have and the negative stream we have. Now, sadly, science shows this, most of our thoughts are repetitive. We think the same thoughts over and over and over again, and most of them are predominantly negative. And again, those of you that do the work, and a lot of you are, do a lot of personal development, you're much more aware, if you've done the work, of your mind and the noise and the negativity that it can create, which is absolutely insanity. You think, with this computer that we've got between our ears, we would think that it's programmed for us to be successful and happy and courageous and fearless and overcome fears and overcome obstacles. You think it was programmed that way, but it's not. It's actually programmed for survival. And there's ways that the brain, whether it's the amygdala or the psycho-cybernetic mechanism or the reticular activating system, all these different parts of the brain, when we understand them, they are designed to keep us playing small, because the body is a survival mechanism. It wants to survive. It's not about thriving. It's about survival. It's about not dying, and whether that's an emotional death or a physical death. And that's why a lot of you, if I was to offer you an opportunity to do something you've never done before, in fact, this happened yesterday. I was down having a treatment, and I was talking to the girl, and I was saying, she said, oh, what'd you do this morning? I said, oh, actually, I was flying. And she said, I could never do that. I said, what do you mean you could never do that? She said, well, it's I just would never do that. I said, well, what do you mean? I mean, just tell me what you're thinking. She said, well, it's because, planes crash. I said, but you drive a car, right? She said, yeah. I said, but don't cars crash? Yeah, I know, but it's just, and she had this picture in her mind about flying. And I said, can I ask you a question? She said, yeah. I said, is your mother scared of flying? She said, how'd you know? I said, well, because fear is something we learn. Fear isn't something, it just happens. Now, it can happen. That's not always true. I mean, if you have a near experience, because a lot of people do this, something happens, they have a close call, and then they stop doing that thing, right? And I mean, I'm a scuba diver, and there's been multiple times underwater where either myself or somebody around me or my buddy has had a problem underwater, and we've had to go into a rescue situation, right? That occurs. Never stopped me diving, because what I did is, like any person that is passionate about anything, is to practice situations that go wrong. And you think about that, whether it's flying or whether it's, scuba diving or any of the stuff that I love to do, boating. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been caught in extreme weather, near hurricanes, or, been in situations where, the boat is broken at an inopportune time. But what happens is, again, with the practice of overcoming or navigating, hard situations, then when they happen, they become very easy to do. It's like a natural response. And that's why, again, my buddy Robbie and I, he's a guy I dive with a lot, and I've had hundreds and hundreds of dives. I remember early on when we dove a lot together, every single time we got back to the boat, and when we were in 25 feet of water, we would practice drills, removing masks, we'd swap tanks, we'd swap gear, we would practice ascending, buddy breathing. So we just did it over and over again. And the same guy I sailed with, I mean, I've sailed a lot. Every time we were out, we would practice man overboard drills, but we would do it without telling the other person. Sometimes we would just say, one of us would be sitting there and we'd just suddenly throw a life jacket overboard and say, man overboard! It would be under full sail, and we'd have to respond quickly and immediately. And then, obviously, if you understand sailing, there's a set of moves that occur so that you can come back to the person in the water without hitting them or hurting them, and stalling the boat into the wind so that you can actually retrieve a person out of the water. But that's a sort of practice. And the same when I'm flying, practicing when things go wrong, practicing, whether it's a crosswind takeoff or a crosswind landing, not because it's necessary at that time. It's because there's going to be things that occur and you want to be automatic. And there's that great story, Tully, the guy that landed, was it called the Miracle on the Hudson? And Tully was, I think it's Tully or Scully? Tully, I think it's Tully. Where he was able to land that plane on the Hudson. But if you ever watched the movie, and it's really good to watch that, watch what happens. He's got seconds to make a decision. He loses both engines because of a bird impact, and he moves immediately into his training, and he successfully lands a plane on the Hudson River, and nobody dies. He's the last one off the plane. But when you look at why he was so successful, it's because he practiced these things over and over and over again through his career and taught them. And so when I think about success in business, I think about success in life, I think about navigating challenges, navigating hurdles. I think it's the same thing. And I do it mentally. I actually pre-think a lot of things ahead of time. So in other words, if something happens, how am I going to respond? So, and I know some of you already heard me talk about these things, whether let's say I lose a leg, or I'm in a fire, or break my back, so tomorrow or no, right now, I'm in an accident. Oh, by the way, one of the comments, and I really respect you, if you're probably not listening to this, because the guy said, hey, I love the message, but I don't listen to people who are recording while they're in their cars. So totally respect you, totally get that. I kind of wish I may have to do a show just for you, so you can actually hear some of these things and play out. But the idea that and I forgot my train of thought there. I went off on a little rabbit hole there, and I forgot where I was going. So if I get lost here a little bit, don't worry, I'll come back, I'm sure. When we're navigating Oh yeah, I know what it was. I pre-think how I'm going to be in a certain situation, right? Whether it's a car accident, I think about, one of the things is, I'm driving up on the ski hill. So, there's a philosophy that, when people start to slide off the road, that why people roll is because they attempt so quickly to pull the car back onto the road. So you're skidding off the road, and there's an immediate response of survival to bring yourself back, which creates the car to flip. Now, because we want to protect the car. But if you've thought about it over and over and over again, and you think, well, I'm driving on these dangerous, high mountain roads, then the likelihood of it happening one day is going to be quite real. So without being morose or negative, reenacting in my brain, I can't practice skidding off the road. But what I can do is go over it in my mind as a drill and think, if this was to happen right now, what is the safest response? Now, this is both with a ski hill or, let's say, an animal. I ride a motorbike, and one of the most dangerous things where I live, especially if you're going fast, which I tend not to on my bike, but I mean, fast is relative, right? If a deer steps out, or a moose, or any kind of animal, it's what do you do? And most people's instinct is to swerve around an animal, and which of course puts you at high risk instead of hitting it. And so when you're going to go off the road, the immediate response would be to steer yourself down the hill, down the drop, and try and hit a tree to stop yourself. But that's something, unless you've thought about it and practiced it and rehearsed it over and over and over again, that response isn't there. You're going to go back to survival, which is to suddenly swerve like you see an animal. The correct response is to hit it. Because if you swerve into traffic, A, you could endanger somebody else's life, and B, you can endanger your own if you swerve off the road. And it happens all the time. So, there's reports of these things, but we just don't, we walk through life as if these negative things aren't going to happen. But they happen, whether it's in business, in relationships, in sports, in adventure, in hobbies. Things are always occurring that can put us in danger. Now, the one thing that I say is that for most people, it's enough to stop them even trying. The second is that avoidance of these tough conversations, avoidance of the possibility that you're going to be in an accident, the possibility that an animal is going to jump out. I'm always thinking, if I'm on a country road, I am going to assume that an animal will jump out, which means I'm defensive. Here's another thing, when I drive through intersections, especially on my motorbike, I always slow down, even if it's a green light. I see a green light, I'm going through an intersection, I just understand, I've seen it enough, I watch it enough where people are running lights, they're running the orange, or, they don't see a bike. What I do is, I always take my foot off or take my hand off the gas, I just slow down, I'm double checking, and then I pass through, right? But it's that living in the reality of what's really happening in the world versus this kind of, it's never going to happen to me. So you're not thinking about how you're going to behave in certain situations, accidents. And that happened to me. I had a very, very severe motorcycle accident many years ago. And, and I always said I'd never ride without gloves. I'd never ride without gloves, full face helmet, and pants, and a leather jacket type of thing. But I was called into work late, this is many years ago, and I jumped on a bike with shorts, a short sleeve t-shirt, an open face helmet, no gloves, and as I'm going along, a woman pulled out in front of me. And I remember, because I'd gone through this in my mind, knowing that if I brake, and I started to, and what's going to happen is, the bike is going to slide. I'm wearing shorts at this point. So what I did was I just simply drove. I had nowhere to go. I simply just opened up that throttle, and I went over the car. My legs broke the windshield of the car. Fortunately for me, there were soft leather brown cases tied to the roof, and my face came down onto the cases. The bike was a write-off. The car was a write-off. But what it is I responded to something because I'd thought about it, and I'd sort of pre-thought it, knowing what I want to behave like in those situations. What do I do? How do I prepare myself for situations that, again, have occurred, whether I'm flying, whether I'm scuba diving, whatever it is? How do I behave? What do I do? How do I, even if I'm not practicing physically, I'm mentally practicing when things go wrong, how to navigate them. And how do I bring that back into my life? How do I bring that back into every day? The same thing. I don't walk through life with this kind of, rosy philosophy that everything's going to go right. In fact, and a lot of people say, if you think about negative thoughts, you attract them. I think that's absolute bullshit, because it's not a negative thought if you're planning how you're going to navigate something that could, and potentially there's a high risk of it occurring, because statistically, if I'm driving down a road in a car, there's a very, very high chance that an accident can occur with other people driving towards me. I don't know who's drinking, who's on drugs. I don't know, who's distracted on their phone. So there's a very high chance that something that can happen. What I can do is just think about those particular things and how I'm going to respond. And I say respond to those things. I drive around the parking lot here. And so I think there's a parking spot. Is that a parking spot right there? Or is that, excuse me, I'm just going to check if that's I think it is. Oh no, it's handicap. I would never tell you. I love that. There was a saying one time I saw in a handicap store that says, is this the only time you take my place? That's a great thought, right? Anyway, so back to this, right? So, it's not a question of attracting negativity. It's a question of training the mind. It's like, when you're learning to fly, let's say, you're not focused on crashing, but you are saying that because I am aware this is a reality, and because I practice my responses adequately, then when they occur, I do the right thing. And so if you walk through life and something happens and you realize that there's a high chance that things can go wrong, there's a high chance of accidents, there's a high chance that someone you love is going to get hurt, there's a high chance that someone you love may pass, all these different things. It's like, how are you preparing yourself to navigate these normal everyday occurrences versus sort of like wandering through life as if nothing's ever going to happen, and when it does, you're completely derailed. And I know people that have gone years after something's happened as if they can't believe it happened to you. And I don't understand that. There are so many people who have been in accidents and, become paraplegic or quadriplegics. And I know the people I know who are so beautiful and have navigated it elegantly, they live extraordinary lives, but that is a reality that can happen to every single one of us. So if it occurs, how do you want to be when it occurs? How do you prepare yourself mentally for these things so when they happen, you just navigate them with elegance and ease and speed? Because one of the things I always love to do is I always love to give myself a mourning period. A mourning period means if there's been something catastrophic happen, if there's an event that that occurs, then how long do I want to be focused on the negative side of that, the sadness, the loss, or the change, right? Whether it's simple, like your car gets written off, right? Your favorite car, right? How long do you want to mourn? And this happened to my son Ben when his car got written off, his first car he ever bought, and it was beautiful. The guy looked after it, had the original manuals. It was an older car. He drove into a tree. It was a big accident. But I remember saying to Ben, how long are you going to mourn for this? He's like, what do you mean? I said, well, it's a car. When do you want to let it go and never think about it again? Instead of wondering, I can't believe I lost my car. The accident's already happened. The response time is up to us, the mourning period. He said to me, well, how long do you think that mourning period should last? And I said, for a car? What, half an hour? An hour? 2 hours? A day? Right? And I know it's your first car. So anyway, I think we settled on 3 days. But then let it go. Let it go. It's like, after that, he had his bike stolen in Vancouver because he just, first time in the city, and he locked it up wrong. He didn't think that people are going to steal it because you live in a world like we do here where not a lot of theft happens. And it got stolen first day. And he phoned me and said, do you think I should go to the police? Do you think I should? I said, just let it go. You're never going to find it. So let it go. Just take the lesson and don't think about it anymore. Don't let it consume you. Don't walk around and focus on, I can't believe I lost my bike. What's that going to do? How does it help? It doesn't help. The adjustment period and the more you practice these things, the quicker you can rebound from anything. Anything happens, you're like, got it. This is a normal occurrence, which it is. Everything that really happens is normal. It's like, if you're, again, some of you saw my social media. By the way, my social media, davidtswood. on Instagram and Facebook. But you may see that when my house was on fire, apparently, I got a call saying my house was on fire, the fire brigade were there, so a house, I mean, I have friends who have houses have burnt down. That is a real occurrence if you own a property or live in a house, that they can burn down. So if it happens, how long do you want to hold on to it before you just say, look, this is there's a high percentage, or not a high percentage, a percentage of chance that my house could end up in that way. If it happens, how do I navigate? How do I prepare for it? Because preparation is part of it. So if there's things that you really want to protect, then protect them. Put them in a fire safe. If there's something you think, but rather than not have a fire safe and you lose everything, right? Or leave it in in someone else's house or a safety deposit box or whatever you want to do. If there's something, I don't have anything like that that's protected. I do have a gun safe, but if I lose it, I lose it. But I know that if it happens, how quickly I will adjust. Now I have insurance. Now, if you don't have insurance, I understand it's a whole different animal. And then you got to start figuring out, I'm not prepared. And if you say I can't afford insurance, then you have to get right with the idea that if you have a high loss, that you have nothing coming back. But you're taking that risk in advance. You make that choice by not having insurance. So if it burns down, then don't be a victim about it afterwards. Just understand, say, look, I'm making a choice, but whether it's a choice you can choose or not, because let's be honest, if you can't afford insurance and the insurance is $1,000 a year, you're telling me you couldn't get a part-time job on a Saturday to earn $1,000, or go and collect bottles, or do something to pay for that insurance. If you really, really wanted to, right, you could. Now, if you don't, then you accept in advance that could happen, that you could lose it all. But you know that in advance. So why behave? So it burns down. It's like, yep, I knew that could happen. I was prepared for it mentally, and I'm just going to move on. Off I go, right? And that is what I'm talking about. It's a muscle, and it's such a powerful muscle, is to pre-think and prepare yourself for the worst things. And it's not like a focus. It's like a drill. It's like, that, and it gives you a confidence. It's like, I can handle anything. I know when I'm driving, and again, if you know, I haven't had many accidents, but I'm a defensive driver. I love to drive fast when I'm alone. I don't do that with people in the car, but I'm a defensive driver, but I'm a realist. I drive knowing there's a high percentage of chance that I could have an accident. So especially on, again, a motorbike, and everyone's like, oh, they're so dangerous. Really? Are they really dangerous? I don't think so. It's just because when people get hit with a motorbike, and I've had motorcycle accidents, catastrophic ones, and I was fine, right? I know some people die, but there are car accidents. Look at Schumacher, the famous Formula One racing driver. I mean, he drove the fastest on the planet, the most winningest Formula One racing driver, and he has a small accident on a ski hill, hits his head, and now was in a coma for years, and radically changed it, not from the Formula One driving, from a small ski accident, right? That radically changed his life. So my sort of thrust of this particular show is that mental preparation, preparing for the worst eventualities, not in a negative way, in a fear-based way, in a honing my skill ways, and then the adaptation and the acceptance of what happens, so you can quickly navigate through it and then continue on through life without carrying this baggage, because it is experience. Everything that's ever happened to me, whether it's underwater, in the air, or wherever I do these things I love to do on the ocean, has given me an experience. So when they happen again, I have this thing that I can call upon called experience that allows me to navigate it even more quickly, and I can prevent things because I can see them coming. So with that being said, then, so check in with yourself. What are you mentally prepared for, and how do you prepare yourself, and play that game. Read of anything. If you read about someone in an accident, a house burning down, or an accident where they lose a leg or something, put yourself in the situation and say, choose. How are you going to adapt? What's going to happen to you when it happens? How do you mentally prepare yourself for those situations? How do you open your eyes and go, wow, everything's going to be fine, right? So with that being said, I'll definitely see you on the other side. Don't forget, push, share, comment, get involved. And you can ask me questions. If there are things you want me to cover or get more specifics on, ask me, and I will do a show specifically for you. So don't forget, this is our community, but I'm willing to be, guided by you. So please ask me anything you want, and I'll answer those questions. So see you on the other side, and thank you for listening in.